Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mellissa Thomas with Florida National News. And of course, here with our co-host, Ms. Angel Perry, who is the Executive Vice President of the Communications Workers of America, Local 3108. How's it going, Angel?
It is going great, Melissa. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. And of course, this is now our 15th episode of Let's Clarify. Super exciting, y'all. And for today's episode, we want to clarify an interesting disparity that we're now seeing between companies having a hiring shortage right now versus the currently millions that are still unemployed. So there are folks that are unemployed, but companies are looking for people. They're saying we're ready to hire, especially now that many people are vaccinated and ready, states are opening up. So what is the cause of this? So we'll let Angel break some things down for us.
So here in Florida, I have to highlight this. Okay. So we had McDonald's, a franchise owned by Blake Casper. He is in such of a need of employees. And it's not that he's not paying well, $15 an hour or whatever, depending on the job positions. Not that he's not paying well. McDonald's has plenty of benefits. People are not even showing up to the interviews. Like what? Like
exactly.
What? $50 just to show up and fill out an application. Like what is happening?
Exactly.
So we have this CARES Act unemployment versus going back to work. Now, here in Florida, we've been open. Like we've been chilling. We've been open. Going slowly back to business as usual compared to the rest of the country, which kind of just been whatever they're doing. We don't know. Florida rules, okay? We've handled ours, okay? But let's just dive into what's active now with the unemployment. Okay, so President Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus plan included a weekly unemployment of $300 a week.
Right.
Okay, so here in Florida, our unemployment is $275. So you add the federal unemployment with the state unemployment, and that's $575 a week.
Yeah.
And it's extended to September. Okay?
Right.
Going back to work, a lot of people, and this before COVID and what's not being taken into consideration, had 2 or 3 jobs just to pay rent. When you get in a situation where your rent is covered, food is covered, because part of the CARES Act too is that you get food benefits irregardless of income. You just apply and they give it to you. Okay, fine. When we were shut down, all of that made sense. Now, we have the vaccine. We know that masks work. All of us essential workers have been at work all day, every day, throughout the whole thing.
Right.
I've been out the whole time. Okay, so we know mask works, social distancing works, washing your hands, the hand sanitizers like Orange County like to give out. All of this stuff works. So, and then it begs the frustration of why we had this whole long shutdown to begin with. So then when you go to apply, the short version of it, the first 90 days absolutely made sense. But the extended version, a lot of us are struggling because Florida was open. We got to work. Our economy is already ahead of the rest of the country as far as people coming to work. But then we have this play on income. Okay, $575 a week is a lot more to most people than ever before. Federal unemployment minimum, federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. It hasn't changed in decades.
Right.
Okay. Florida's on a minimum wage as of right now is $8.65 an hour. And we understand that there's different values to different jobs. Absolutely.
Right.
Right. So, but this whole COVID thing awakened. It awakened where people got used to having one income come in and being able to pay all their bills.
Right.
So once upon a time, one job, you were able to buy a house, buy a car, feed your family. And then somewhere along the way, companies were supposed to take care of their employees, and for some companies, they just don't. They just don't. The CEO's buying 10 yachts while the frontline worker has
a bunch of layoffs.
Well, not even layoffs. So, because I'm not gonna say no big retail chains names. So you have your onboarding with some retailers, very large ones, that you don't need a union. They'll tell you that. And here's how to apply for state benefits and have record profits every year, especially during this pandemic. Okay. But then we, the taxpayers, make up for that, because if a person is employed and they're on state benefits because they don't make enough money, that's coming out of the taxpayers' money.
Right.
So that's like the corporation is getting profits over hiring people that can't feed their families. They're doing the right thing. They're showing up for work. They're working hard. They love what they do. So we're just having this huge upheaval of our capitalist society that, when capitalism works, it works well, meaning the companies make a profit, the public and the employees have the dollar to buy. But then COVID comes along and we have this imposed COVID recession. So now
that's a way to put it.
Yeah, but that's exactly what happened. It's it's not a natural occurrence. So going back to work, you have all of these obstacles. Why would I get up and work 2 or 3 jobs when I can sit at home?
There's that.
Why would I get up and risk getting COVID? These are all questions everybody has to ask. And it's not an easy decision. So then let's add to that, you have, the shutdowns and everything else. Where are the kids going? Where are the, how do you justify it? So the employers are now not willing to change what they paid the employees from, any more than what they paid before. So that's now the battle, all the way up until September. September 6th is when this last unemployment CARES Act funding ends. Now the first one was $600 a month.
Right.
That first one, so before it was $875 a week. That was way more than anybody would have ever had, unless they had a trade position of some kind. So I don't know. McDonald's is struggling. Restaurants are struggling in general. Hotels are struggling to get people to come back to work. And I'm hearing both sides of it, small businesses and workers. A lot of it is we were drilled into thinking if you go outside, you're going to kill somebody. I mean, that's basically what 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. How many people died today? How many cases today? How many people died today? You know, a lot of people buried relatives and everything else during all of this. And it's not technically over. We just have a vaccine now that's slowing everything down. But that's the battle right now is what do we do? Okay, our stuff is starting to open up, but why am I going outside when I was told for a year not to?
Right. Right. And on that note, y'all, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Hey, leave a comment below, by the way, you know, in terms of your thoughts on this situation, what you think is causing workers to not necessarily be so quick to go back to the workforce. You know, we love to have that conversation with you. In the meantime, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And on the other side, we're going to break down a couple of other reasons, other possible reasons why. But stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Mercury agents everywhere are saving people hundreds and are also there to help save the day.
That was fast.
You covered.
Thanks, agents.
Watch out!
That's my car!
Don't worry, we're here to help.
For savings and service above the rest, you can count on Mercury. We're on a mission to save you money.
And we are back, guys, with Let's Clarify. And yeah, you know what I mean? Angel mentioned right before the break a couple of reasons why folks might reconsider rejoining the workforce with what's going on with the COVID-19 pandemic. So, you know, one reason, obviously, that sort of disparity between having to work 2 jobs or 3 in some households versus receiving the CARES Act funding that's available to them right now. That's kind of helping. Obviously, this is not a blanket thing. There's some families that are still struggling. You know, there was a whole rash of, you know, eviction situations, you know, the whole moratorium on evictions and things like that. But a lot of the workforce, like, they're able to get the financial help that they need. So now they're weighing those options.
Right.
Another reason that Angel briefly touched on, and we can expound on it a little bit more now, is with the pandemic is still here and kids are still at home. Like, virtual learning is still a thing right now. In the state of Florida, like, the governor was like, these kids are going back to school. They get on their parents' nerves. These kids are going back.
But not only that, the science says that, you know, it wasn't even about the kids transmitting.
Yeah.
You put a mask on the kid for the adults to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers should have been first for the vaccines, and they weren't.
Exactly.
It just, all over the country, it just seems that nobody was listening to the teachers. And we were talking about that on one of our previous shows. There's no easy answers to any of it, but it points to a big question of why we had such a long shutdown to begin with when the initial science came out, which isn't new, about masking, social distancing, hand sanitizer, all of these things that the CDC had guidelines from decades ago. This wasn't even new information. This wasn't new information that came with COVID-19. This is information they had in the prevent and spread of communicable diseases. So, okay, we got in the habit of doing all these things to prevent spread. And then now, because we have the vaccines to help and maintain and lower caseloads and deaths. Now, mind you, what also contributed to the drops in deaths is the therapies that came out of it. There's been a lot of therapies that came out of having to deal with COVID in such a intense and focused event, you know, because the hospitals were starting to fill up, and respiratory doctors and respiratory specialists had to, you know, work around the clock, and it's like, we got to figure this out, which they did. They had the antibody therapies that people were able to gather and get, which Florida was one of the first to have that at our hospitals. Realizing that when someone was fighting COVID on a severe case, with lungs filling up with fluid to actually put them on their stomach, bottom up, so that it expands the lungs and they're able to survive longer. And then, of course, with the last administration, making sure that we had ventilators. The ventilators were a thing, and doing the emergency manufacturing of PPE. So we as a country have stayed on top of adapting to all this. So now we're just having this additional economic fallout, and we have kids at home.
Right.
That wasn't a priority. Like we've talked about this previously with the teachers. The teachers were telling the governments all over the country, okay, we have these things in place for work sites. You could go to McDonald's and everything was prepared properly, but they weren't doing that for the schools. You want the schools open, but then you don't want them to have hand sanitizers. You didn't want them to have everything in place. And then we had examples in other countries that deal with
that were successful.
That were very successful, where the teachers were safe and the kids were safe. I'm a little lost at the priority that was put on opening a bar. Well, no, the bars were, never mind. I misspoke on that. Opening up retail stores. But let's identify what actually got open, because there have been so many small businesses that'll never be open again.
Yep.
That's what got devastated. And then, so you have kids at home for classes, people not wanting to come to work. You also have childcare that got devastated.
Right.
Because now you had all these guidelines that the schools were neglected, and government setting up for what you needed to sanitize and all that stuff. The daycares also didn't have the funding or anything. So a lot of those closed forever. And those closed forever, or there's not as many as there were before, right? Right. A lot of people that lost their jobs aren't coming back. So we don't even have trades, like the trade industry where you could learn a skill and go to work because you were professional at that skill, like a plumber, electrician, mechanic schools. All of those diminished because you have high school to university. Like, this country is about ingenuity. It's always been about ingenuity. And somewhere along the way, in the past few decades, trades lost their luster because kids aren't told about them, So you have all these dynamics that are affecting us today. Once upon a time in high school, you had the military come in and speak to you. You had police officers come in and speak to you. You had the trades, union trades, come in and speak to you, and the universities come in and speak to you. And in some kind of way, it was budgeted out that only the universities showed up. So now you have a disenfranchised workforce because this imposed recession from COVID has closed so many small businesses. You have people that don't even know the jobs that are open. So you're asking people to go back to work, and it may not be what they're used to doing. And a lot of employers aren't even training. They're looking for already experienced.
Yes.
So then not only do you have some employers that are greedily paying as little as possible, not all employers, just the really big ones, retail ones, that are paying as little as possible and offering state benefit packages at your higher class. Then you have where people want to go back to work, but then the industry that they were in is gone, or where they live is gone, and they need to do something else. So then how are you hireable or want to try to do something else? And there's no trade industry. So you have all of these dynamics that is just causing a storm that we've never even seen before.
Right. And one of the things that's also that one of the consequences of the pandemic, it was starting to happen anyway, particularly after 2008. But it hit really hard in the pandemic, which is e-commerce and all things gig. You know what I mean? People still wanting to find a way to earn income in a way that's flexible and remote. So part of the reason why a lot of folks don't want to return to the workforce either is they started to get used to the flexibility in their schedule and being able to work remotely there too. I did want to highlight a comment very quickly. A gentleman named Mr. Make That Make Sense. He was generous enough to comment. He said, companies are actually acting real sketch with the hiring practices right now. Thank you for sharing that. He used to make six figures as a truck driver and is a retired veteran. So thank you, sir, for your service. That's number one. But even to his point in terms of driving a truck, that's one of those industries that's starting to decline too, with AI and self-driving vehicles and things like that. And, you know, I mean, that's something that people have to take into consideration as well. Like, this is the economy kind of did one of these numbers.
Yeah, we're in upside down world right now, trying to figure it out. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of choices that families have to make, businesses have to make. And we really need to highlight what's individual to you and what's important to you with all this chaos. A lot of it is you have all this funding coming in from DC, but it's not really addressing all the gaps that need to be addressed. So yeah.
Now that we've laid all of that out, y'all, stay tuned for segment number 3 on the other side of this break. You guys know we never just leave you with just the problem. We never do that. We always leave you guys with a solution. So stay tuned. We will be back after the break with our call to action as always. We'll be right back.
At Taco John's, you can expect one thing: so good. As in quality ingredients used in tacos and burritos made just for you. Every single bite.
So good.
Expect nothing less at Taco John's.
And we are back. Super quick break. But yeah, of course, you guys heard us talk about, basically the 4 main reasons why we're seeing the disparity. Obviously, some folks getting used to being remote. Some folks getting used to the federal funding that's been coming in terms of unemployment benefits and the CARES funding, things like that. Home care still being a need, you know what I mean? Kids are still at home. They can't go back to the workforce yet because they still have to make sure that their kids are taken care of.
Right.
And, another reason we didn't quite discuss just yet, we kind of grazed over it, but given now what you said before about them getting used to receiving that funding, folks are now starting to expect higher wages.
Right.
When they're, when you're wooing them to hire them, they now want to hear bigger numbers than what they're used to.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're holding out for those bigger wages. So,
and that's the other thing. So once you have an entire society of people, we're talking about millions, that are used to having a singular income come in and being able to pay all their bills, why would I go back to working 2 jobs, 3 jobs?
8 something an hour.
Right. So then being a shortage of workers, employers are having to offer more incentives and everything else. Yep. That's fine for the big companies, but what about the mom and pop shops?
Yeah.
So we're still the small business is still incredibly hurting. It's just it's a very tumultuous situation because we're trying to climb our way out of the biggest upside down of everything. But that's okay because there's a way out. So for those families that are considering the vaccines, as we always say, consult your physician because it does depend on your personal medical history. The pushing of the vaccines without that small bit of recommendation, I think is a malpractice. You really need to consult your physician, double check your history to make sure that you're making an educated decision. And then those that are looking for work, take into account that there are trades. They just don't talk about it. We're out here. The unions are out there. As stuff is opening up, Google is free. Just think of something you want to do, electrician or cable linesman or any of the essential worker trades. Because like I said, I've worked the whole time. I'm an essential worker. So sometimes those things are a better fit for a family than the traditional high school, university, and then hope to find something that pays off that incredible university bill.
Yeah.
It took me so long to pay off my college debt. Like, oh my goodness, I'm glad I'm done. Okay. Yeah. I'm actually done.
Miraculous.
Now, because there is so much that different things that we went over and everybody's situation is not going to be exactly the same. We are recommending wholeheartedly, as we always do, find out who your state legislator, House and Senate, and your federal congressperson, House and Senate are, because all of the dynamics as we are working together to make all this make sense, as our commentator, we try to make this upside down imposed recession make sense. It's going to be vital that you are using your voice. You should be registered to vote. You should be reaching out to your legislators and explaining what your needs actually are. Because if you're in a high risk area where there's a lot of cases of COVID, you might not even want to leave your house because that's what they told us not to do. Don't leave your house.
Exactly.
Okay. And then maybe where you are, there's plenty of work, but you don't have the skills to actually do those jobs that are available. And that's a lot of the problem too that nobody's addressing. So Google the unions in your area and find out, what trades schools are available, because a lot of them can be covered by you doing apprenticeships. People don't realize that still exists.
That's a thing. That is a thing.
The all-American thing, like apple pie. So, there are solutions, but it in this time, you definitely need to have your voice. Email your legislators, let them know what your family needs are to get the resources and solutions so we can all move forward out of this upside down world. Let's make it make sense.
Amen. Amen. And shout out again to our commenter, Mr. Make That Make Sense. Love it.
Right?
Make that make sense for us.
Make that make sense.
Mm-hmm. And really that's pretty much what this whole show is for. That's what Let's Clarify is all about. We want to make sure we make the headlines make sense for you. Right. But yeah, make sure, you guys, take that call to action, harass your peoples, research who they are, knock down their doors, call them, email them, whatever the case may be. And of course, do your research. Make sure you also do your medical research. If you're someone who hasn't been vaccinated, maybe you're hesitant about that. Do whatever research you need to do there, your medical history, all of that stuff before you head back out. And of course, certain states now are starting to stagger their mask mandates. We here in Orange County just had an announcement today, earlier this morning, about, our mask mandates starting to come down, particularly for those who have been vaccinated above the age of 17 years old, So wherever you live, wherever you're watching this, be sure that you're familiar with those policies locally as well. But yeah, we do ultimately want folks to go back to work because that's what helps the economy.
Absolutely.
That's what helps the economy.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Absolutely. So on that note, guys, thank you as always for tuning in. It is always a pleasure for us to come to you every Wednesday. If you haven't yet, be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow all of them things, do all the social media things. You'll find us at Florida National News on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We have a couple of other Facebook pages. The show particularly airs on FNN News TV on Facebook, so you can find us over there as well. You can also check out FNN News Live. On YouTube, be sure to not only hit the subscribe button, but also hit the little bell icon so you get all the notifications for all of our shows. And on Instagram, in case you want to shoot Angel a specific questions, you can find her at A4Amazing over there. She'll be glad to answer any questions you have. And of course, below this video, wherever you're watching it, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, doesn't matter. If you have your questions, your comments, drop them. We'd love to continue the conversation and chop it up with you guys. And for anyone interested in advertising, you can shoot us an email at ads@floridanationalnews.com, or if you wish to sponsor an episode of Let's Clarify, we'd love to have that conversation with you and get started with you. In the meantime, guys, thank you as always for tuning in. Angel, thank you as always for the conversation and for breaking stuff down. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Continue to stay safe. This pandemic is still out here. While the mandates are still in effect, be sure to wear your mask. Make sure you're distant and you're safe washing your hands. All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your evening.